Let's go to our favorite U.S. report regular, former White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney. Mick, thanks so much for joining us again. And I want to talk about Joe Biden and gas, or petrol as we call it here. He's trying to convince people, again, that he is fixing gas prices by releasing petroleum reserves from the strategic petroleum reserves, which are now at their lowest levels since the 1980s. If Donald Trump, I think, tried a stunt like this, he'd be accused of playing politics with energy security. Is he going to get away with it?
Yeah, James, it's great to see you. And as always, y'all have got some of the best video I see of any American politics. I've never seen that clip of that woman running into the freight elevator. That's really good research. So keep up the good work. Look, if Donald Trump had done the exact same thing, he would be accused of playing politics with the strategic oil reserves, because that's exactly what he would be doing. If you talk about making these announcements 2.5, 3 weeks before an election and then telling people it's going to lower the price of gas, which it's never going to do, it is nothing but politics. Keep in mind, he talked about maybe releasing an additional 500,000 barrels of oil a day starting after the election. America consumes about 20 million gallons a day, so it's not going to move the needle at all. It's a symbolic gesture, but it gets him a lot of good press on left-leaning media outlets. The ABC Good Morning America has led with stories about what he's doing to try and lower gas prices 3 of the 4 last days. So it is all politics. I don't think it's going to move the needle at all, because people won't see an impact at the pump. But it is pretty much business as usual for American politics in the last month before an election.
But I'll tell you what, Mick, is not business as usual is some of the polls we're seeing in places like New York. Polls are moving across the board for Republicans, not just in the House and the Senate, but some of the governor's races. Talk me through what's happening in New York, my old home state, generally considered a one-party state. Are they about to elect a Republican governor? And if so, why?
Yeah. It's getting really, really close. Lee Zeldin, a name you've probably not heard before, a former member of Congress, a friend of mine, a colleague, a Republican from Long Island, is actually now within single digits, and in a couple of polls is within the margin of error of winning the governor's race in New York. This would be a tectonic sort of shift in American politics. The only thing I would think would be bigger would be a Republican winning statewide office in California. That just doesn't happen. So you're starting to see this momentum. You and I have talked back and forth over the last couple of weeks about the pendulum, and it tends to swing during elections one side to the other. And the real question is, whose side is it swinging to in those critical last 2 or 3 weeks? And right now it's swinging the Republicans' way. Keep in mind, in many states, including my own state, voting started today. Early voting exists in a lot of states, so you can sort of start to vote now if you want to. So now is the critical time. It looks like the Republicans are doing well. They have a chance in New York. They have a chance in Oregon, which is about as progressive as it gets. And as you heard Annalise correctly say, it looks like they're winning a race in Nevada, which is a miracle. If that is really the case, if what we're seeing now holds for the next 2.5 weeks, you might see a Republican landslide, the likes of which no one really expects as we sit here today.
So, Mick, you mentioned Oregon. They had a lot of chaos, dysfunction with Antifa and crime in Portland. We've seen in New York, it's just mayhem after mayhem in New York City, but also other parts of the state and even in the suburbs. Is crime and dysfunction and the fallout from the 2020, summer of love, as they called it, is that still playing out, that people are just really concerned about their actual safety, and that's driving people towards the Republicans?
Yeah, for Republicans to do well in California, and I talked to Kevin McCarthy, the leader of the Republicans, the likely next Speaker of the House. He's a friend of mine. He says they've got a chance in some California U.S. House races, which is unheard of. Everything has to go right for that to work for the Republicans. There has to be a crime problem. There is. The economy has to be a shambles, which it is. The Democrat leadership has to be sort of in disarray, which it is. Keep in mind, you're looking at a race right now for the first time in a long time where the incumbent Democrat president and the incumbent Democrat Speaker of the House and the incumbent leader of the Senate, also a Democrat, can't go out and campaign with people because those national leaders are so unpopular. So these folks are left to run on their own against sort of a national machine, and it's not going well for the Democrats. Everything has to go right for the Republicans to be competitive in some of these states, and it looks like everything is going right for the Republicans as we come into the last couple of weeks.
And that brings me to another question. I mean, you look at places like Georgia and Pennsylvania where the Republicans are doing quite well. And in Georgia with a candidate, Herschel Walker, who's got a bit of contention around him, how much of what's happening, and if the Republicans do win big, how much of that is going to be them voting for what Republicans stand for, and how much of that is going to be about them voting to reject what Democrats have been, putting on offer for the last couple of years with Joe Biden and longer in some jurisdictions locally?
Yeah, the answer is different in the two states. In Georgia, it's typically a Republican state. Keep in mind, while Herschel Walker is sort of tied with the incumbent Democrat senator there, Senator Warnock, it's still a Republican state, and it looks like the governor there will win by 6 or 8 points. Pennsylvania is the better question because it's a purple state. It really could go either way. It really is not solidly Republican, not solidly Democratic, can go back and forth. If the Republicans win in Pennsylvania, what it tells you is it was the independent voters who came out and said, you know what? I don't really care who's on the Republican side of the ticket. I can't stand additional Democrat leadership because the economy is just crushing me. Yes, abortion might be of importance to me. Foreign policy might be interest, but I'm sick and tired. And I can't afford to pay $5 for gasoline and for petrol anymore. If Pennsylvania goes Republicans' way, it's because independents got tired of Democrats.
Mick Mulvaney, thanks so much, and a great pronunciation of petrol there. Really appreciate it, and we'll speak with you real soon.